I've been here for about a month and a half now, and this is definitely the most difficult situation that I've ever seen. In the time that I've been here, children have been shot and killed. On the 30th of January, the Israeli military bulldozed the two largest water wells, destroying over half of Rafah's water supply. Every few days, if not every day, houses are demolished here. People are economically devastated because of the closure of the borders into Egypt and the extreme control of the Gazan economy by Israel. I saw it. I came to look at the aftermath of a place where 25 greenhouses had been demolished on the other side of Rafah, destroying the livelihoods of about 300 people. And that had taken place while they rounded up about 150 men, held them under a sniper tower, and shot around them to contain the men, the farmers in the area. So I feel like what I'm witnessing here is a very systematic destruction of people's ability to survive. And that is incredibly horrifying. It's incredibly horrifying. Sometimes it takes a while for it to set in what is happening here, because I think many of the people here, they try to maintain what they can of their lives, and I don't know, maybe it has to do with protecting their children, that they try to be happy, joke with their children. So sometimes it takes time to it's hard to hold in your mind, the complete reality of what's happening here. Sometimes I'm sitting down to dinner with people and I just realize that that there is a massive military machine surrounding them and trying to kill these people that I'm having dinner with, these families that I'm sitting down to eat with, and who are being very generous and kind to me, and their children here who are incredibly threatened, living lives that no child ever should have to live. And so I feel a lot of horror, really. I feel a lot of horror about the situation. The current Israeli government, I don't have a great deal of faith that they're going to listen to any message from me. I think it has become clear that this government does not care about the safety of its own people and doesn't care at all about the lives of Palestinian people. I think it's ridiculous that my government supports this government and referred to Ariel Sharon as a man of peace. It's clear to me, being here, that Ariel Sharon is invested in perpetuating perpetuating violence. I think calling it a cycle of violence disregards the imbalance of power in this situation, that people's lives here are almost completely controlled by the Israeli government. And it's amazing that people are able to hold on to their humanity as much as they have.
What you have just seen was aired by the Middle East Broadcasting Company on March 14, 2003. Rachel Corrie would be bulldozed to death, murdered 2 days later. The measure of the crimes of the State of Israel are covered up by the corporate media, which, in spite of being not as appealing anymore as the new mainstream media, which is, I would say, the new mainstream media is Democracy Now!, is the Real News Network, is Al Jazeera. I would say that those actually are the mainstream media. But the new mainstream media still, is not watched by basically people of the baby boomer generation within North America of the United States and Canada. And that has a significant point to it. Now, I'd also point out there's severe drawbacks with Al Jazeera, Democracy Now!, the Gray Zone, these networks have their drawbacks. But the interesting thing is that these networks are more popular now. They are more mainstream than the corporate media. So why does the corporate media hold power? And like I said, this really has to do with the fact that the white caste system of Canada and the United States holds a sort of cultural hegemony in power. The break-offs of the British Empire, that being the United States of America and the State of Israel, have a lot to do with, the current empire. Canada is clearly tied into it. Britain itself is connected into it. The Japanese nation state is tied into it. Like, you get into like the bulk of the imperial core, particularly the western part of the empire, the Western Empire, because there is a competing empire, like there is a competing Eurasian power that's rising. But the current dominant power is suffering from internal, contradictions. Within the State of Israel, there has been consistent protests. The United States is internally decaying. And this is upping the stakes lately. The thing that should be stressed, and I'm speaking only for myself when I say this, I do pray for the hostages, I pray for their families, but I pray more so for Palestine. My heart actually goes out to Gaza. This did not happen out of nowhere. This did not happen because Hamas supposedly has a problem with Jewish people. No. This happened because the siege in Gaza has not been lifted. And because the siege in Gaza has not been lifted, the militants in Gaza have taken to more extreme tactics, which are, and if people are angry that Palestinians are cheering it, get over it. Because the simple truth is, when you oppress someone for long periods of time, there will be backlash. It is inevitable. So, I want to bring us to speaking of democracy now. It's a pretty good clip. I want to bring us to something to start more of the mood of where this is going to go. I'm going to read to you a transcript from Democracy Now!, a video which came out on October 20. I apologize. It's a transcript from October 16th, 2023. The death toll from Israel's bombardment of Gaza has topped 2,700, including more than 1,000 Palestinian children. As the humanitarian crisis worsens, we get an update from Omar Shakir, Israel and Palestine director at Human Rights Watch, who says conditions in Gaza are dire, as Israel has cut off access to electricity and safe water. Many disabled and ill residents are physically unable to obey the evacuation order. This comes as Israeli President Isaac Herzog said his government holds the entire population of Gaza, including civilians and children, responsible for Hamas's attack. Quote, people in Gaza are saying their goodbyes to the world, says Shakir, who also discusses Israel's use of white phosphorus, an illegal weapon of war. This is dehumanization. I'm just going to say that. Free Palestine. Long live Palestine. Long live the Gaza struggle. 100%. Now, again, this clip that I'm going to present you right now for the Bundes movement came from Democracy Now! And it was aired on October 16th. October 16th, 2023.
We begin today's show in Gaza, where the death toll from Israel's 10-day bombardment has topped 2,750. The dead include over 1,000 Palestinian children. Over 50 Palestinians have also been killed in the occupied West Bank. Over 1 million residents of Gaza have been displaced, including many who fled their homes after Israel ordered the entire northern Gaza Strip to be vacated. More than 1,000 people are believed to be trapped under rubble following Israeli airstrikes. And the humanitarian catastrophe is growing as hospitals are running out of electricity and water due to the Israeli siege. Water's already run out at UN shelters across the Gaza Strip. This is Dr. Mohammed Abu Mogaisib, Deputy Medical Coordinator in Gaza for Doctors Without Borders.
The situation is very difficult. I mean, today we were for 2 hours searching for drinkable water. Even drinkable water is not available anymore. It's very difficult. Food, still there is food. No electricity, no pumping of normal water as well. The hospitals are barely working. I mean, there's a lot of medical staff who left the hospital with their families because they cannot, I mean, they are not safe, so they need to stay with their families to evacuate as well. Medication is really decreasing in the private pharmacies as well. So, I mean, it's very dangerous. I mean, they are bombing all the day. So, I mean, there is no humanitarian corridor. Today, I'm in contact with some hospitals, mainly Shifa. Burn unit, there is only one surgeon, one anesthesiologist, no nurses at all in the hospital, in this burn unit especially. They have a lot of shortage, so I mean, we don't know what will be tomorrow and where we are going.
Oxfam's Omar Grebe recorded this audio message from Gaza after fleeing the northern Gaza Strip after Israel ordered the area fully evacuated. He described the mass exodus as Nakba 2.0.
Perhaps yesterday was one of the worst days of my life. We spent years hearing from our grandparents about Nakba and what that was and how they felt. And I think yesterday we had the chance to actually see it with our own eyes. When we were all pushed into mass expulsion to go from north and center Gaza into southern Gaza. And it was really horrible. People spent over 14 hours in an influx of a sea made of people, just walking with their belongings, holding children, holding sick people, holding people with disability, just walking and walking and walking under the sun, begging any passing car to take them. But most cars were filled to the brim. It was Nakba 2.0 happening right in front of our eyes, and we are actually a part of it. I don't know how and when we reached the south, but people kept coming. The streets were frantically busy, and I saw so many people just taking the streets, like putting their children and their belongings in the street and just sitting there, because most really left aimlessly with nowhere to go and no one to seek refuge to. And on top of that, they talked about a safe humanitarian route, and then they bombed 2 trucks filled with people. Tens were dead. I saw the bombing place. I don't know what's gonna happen next.
That was Oxfam's Omar Grebe speaking from Gaza. Many Palestinians say there's no place for them to go. This is Mohammed Alaham, a grandmother speaking from a hospital in Khan Yunis next to her 4-year-old granddaughter, who is the only member of her family to survive after Israel bombed their home.
They were sitting inside the house. My sons and one of their mothers-in-law were at his house. Suddenly, without warning, they bombed the house. 14 people were killed. Only this girl, my granddaughter, Fulla, survived. I hope she'll get better and stay safe and heal. May their souls rest in peace. God is the one who gives patience to people. May God keep me alive to take care of her, and she will be a good person. She is the only person alive from her father's family who is martyred. Also her brother, sister, mother, grandmother from her mother's side, her uncles, all of them, 14 people all at once.
In Israel, family members who have loved ones kidnapped by Hamas held protest over the weekend demanding their safe return. Israel now believes Hamas is holding 199 hostages, a figure that's higher than previous estimates. This is Avichai Brodetz, a farmer from Kibbutz Kfar Aza. His wife and 3 children were taken captive in Gaza, to Gaza.
And my kids are over there, along with my wife, I hope in good health. And I want them to come back home in good health. And I came here, this is where decisions are being made in Israel. If I could go to the center of Gaza and do the same thing, I would. And I wish I could go there someday. We have to stop. I think we got this right now as a sign from God just to stop the bloodshed. And I ask Hamas, which is holding my family, I hope, again, in good health, please stop. And the Israeli government to please stop and just bring the women and children back.
We're joined now by Omar Shaker, Israel and Palestine Director at Human Rights Watch. He's joining us from Chicago. Omar, tell us the latest. It's so difficult to make contact with people in Gaza right now. What you understand is happening. Israel demanding that the entire population of northern Gaza, which is the main population center, including Gaza City, must move south of Khan Yunis. Then, though, that we heard that they were bombing Khan Yunis. Talk about the situation now.
We're witnessing a situation that's simply not fathomable for any of us on the outside. We're talking about a population that has now for days been without electricity, that has been without water, that has been without, for large parts of it, without internet, that's been without food, that's been without aid. Hundreds of thousands have left northern Gaza. You know, if they're lucky, they've been able to get to relatives and family homes south of Wadi Gaza. But many, do not have that privilege and, are making temporary accommodations. They're under constant bombardment. We've seen some of the more intense bombing of Gaza take place over the last 24 to 48 hours. There have been reports of people killed as they were taking a safe route out of Gaza. The hospitals are operating on generators which are running out of fuel. People are now resorting to water that's unfit for human consumption. There are people that have not been able to leave northern Gaza because you have there Gaza's main hospital. You have people with disabilities, you have older people, and they're terrified of what might come ahead. You have Israeli officials who are signaling their intent to commit large-scale atrocities. So we really have a terrifying situation where people in Gaza are saying their goodbyes to the world. They're not sure, whether or not they'll make it to the evening, to tomorrow morning. The humanitarian situation, despite reports, people are not being allowed, have not been allowed to leave via Rafah as of the time we're speaking. Aid is still not getting in. Electricity is still not getting in. There's no confirmed reports of even water having come back in. So it's a really desperate situation.
That Secretary of State Antony Blinken had pushed them to turn the water back on, but because the electricity isn't on, it couldn't be pumped.
Exactly. I mean, you need, in order for water to be provided, you obviously need the electricity to allow the water to be pumped. You also need, the ability for the desalinizational plant to operate. You need electricity. Water infrastructure has been damaged in the airstrikes. And again, the water was only being provided to a certain part of southern Gaza, which is clearly part of the Israeli government's strategy of trying to empty northern Gaza of its population. There are obviously many other areas in Gaza. So right now, people have no choice but to turn to water, which is unfit for human consumption and which carries the risk for those who drink it of waterborne illnesses. So amid everything else, not having water, as the UN has said, water is life, and Gaza is running out of life.
Omar Shaker, in a long Twitter thread you posted on Saturday, you warned Israeli authorities are signaling their intent to commit mass atrocities. You cite a number of Israeli officials making statements suggesting precisely that. Can you document what you're saying and what they've been saying?
Absolutely. I mean, we have seen rhetoric from the Israeli government that signals that they hold the entire 2.2 million people of Gaza responsible for the heinous attacks that took place on October 7th. You have the president of Israel, Isaac Herzog, who said very clearly that the entire nation of Gaza is responsible. He notes that the people there could have risen up, to topple the Hamas government. You have statements from Israel's energy minister, who was responsible for cutting the water, the fuel, the electricity, who has similarly talked about, cutting off the last drop of water and the last battery until they're defeated. Again, he's referring, it's a statement that refers both to Hamas authorities, but also to evacuating the entire population. You have statements, of course, from Israel's defense minister that's gotten much attention about fighting human animals, declaring an entire siege on Gaza. You have Israel's UN ambassador that was on CNN a couple of days ago and spoke about how, let's remember that Hamas, that the population of Gaza elected Hamas. Of course, he neglects to mention that nearly half of Gaza's population are children who weren't even, alive to vote at the last time there were elections. All these statements should worry the international community because they're not happening in a vacuum. They're happening as the Israeli government reduces entire neighborhoods and blocks to rubble, as hundreds of children and civilians have been killed in relentless bombardment, 6,000 bombs dropped in a 25 by 7 mile area. An open air prison. So these statements aren't happening in a vacuum. They're happening amid the most intense bombardment of Gaza we've maybe ever seen, in a situation where more than 1 million people, according to reports, have been displaced from their homes. So the international community must act to stop this. There is a moment that we can try and stop this, and we must do so before it's too late.
I want to play for our audience Israeli President Isaac Herzog claiming no one is innocent in the Gaza Strip, including civilians.
We are operating militarily according to rules of international law, period, unequivocally. It's an entire nation out there that is responsible. It's not true. This rhetoric about civilians not aware, not involved, it's absolutely not true. They could have risen up. They could have fought against that evil regime which took over Gaza in a coup d'etat. But we're at war. We are at war. We're at war we are defending our homes. We're protecting our homes. That's the truth. And then when a nation protects its home, it fights. And we will fight until we break their backbone.
We will fight until we break their backbone. I want to turn to your post on Saturday where you wrote, "History teaches us that when there are clear calls to commit large-scale atrocities by parties capable of doing so, and actions taken consistent with those words, they need to be taken seriously and stopped. That's where we are today in Israel and Palestine, a descent into darkness." Omar Shakir, if you can take it from there.
Yeah, President Herzog talked about breaking their back. They have broken the back of the people of Gaza in a way that's simply unprecedented. The statement that the Israeli government is complying with international law is pure fiction. We know they've cut, vital necessities, as we've discussed, to the entire civilian population. They've sealed the crossings. We know that they have, bombed in a way that, again, is reduced, as has been proudly boasted by the Israeli Air Force on Twitter, of reducing entire neighborhoods and blocks to rubble. We really need to take note of these statements because the Israeli government, and again, that what's striking here is that it's not meeting the sort of pushback that one would expect in a situation like this. It took days for Europe and the United States even to reiterate basic platitudes about the need to comply with international humanitarian law. You're not seeing sufficient effort taken to warn of the risks to Gaza's population. It is a situation that, as we speak, is deteriorating and not enough is being done to stop it.
I want to ask you about white phosphorus. You tweeted, Human Rights Watch tweeted October 12th, Israel's used white phosphorus in military operations in Gaza and Lebanon, putting civilians at risk of serious and long-term injuries. White phosphorus causes excruciating burns and can set homes afire. Its use in populated areas is unlawful. Israel's denied this. What proof do you have of this, Omar Shakir?
I mean, Israel also denied it in 2009 when Human Rights Watch documented it, and that turned out to be false, as was disproven by numerous other voices. Human Rights Watch, verified this evidence. It's confirmed. We were able to take video footage that took place both in Lebanon and Gaza, verify that it was recorded when it was taken. We ran these by weapons and munitions experts who confirmed that it was, that what was shown was white phosphorus. And then we interviewed people who live in the communities where the white phosphorus was dropped in Gaza near the port area, and their description of what it looked like and smelled like was consistent with the use of white phosphorus. Amnesty International followed up with their own reporting where they were able to verify, additional areas in which white phosphorus was used. They were able to look at, footage that was provided by the Israeli government of some of the weapon systems being used in Gaza, again, being able to source it. It was white phosphorus that was being carried by those planes. And of course, we're talking about a weapon that is, when dropped in civilian areas, is unlawful because it can, burn homes and other structures. It can cause lifelong suffering for the communities that live there. The fact that the Israeli government is using it, and let's note that they have, even when not used as a weapon, even when white phosphorus is used for signaling or obscuring the army, it can cause harm to civilians. And the Israeli army has readily available alternatives that have much of the same effect in terms of signaling or obscuring without the harm it causes to civilian populations. Its use is.
Well, Omar Shaker, I want to thank you very much for being with us. Israel and Palestine director at Human Rights Watch, also authored the landmark 2021 Human Rights Watch report titled "A Threshold Crossed: Israeli Authorities and the Crimes of Apartheid and Persecution."
I'm now going to turn this to something from Al Jazeera. It's, they call it quotable. It's a statement by Rabbi Yisrael David Weiss, an activist and spokesman for Neturei Karta. Now, Dr. Abram Weisfeld, this is very important to understand, has met Rabbi Yisrael David Weiss, as well as Rabbi Feldman, are both of them of Neturei Karta. Neturei Karta gets its origins more or less from Meir Sharim. Meir Sharim has been explored on this channel. In the second part of this presentation, by presentation I don't mean presentation. This whole video you're watching is part of a two-parter. The second part will rehash Meir Sharim. Just for effect, because there needs to be a full context for this. Rabbi Yisrael David Weiss is part of Neturei Karta. Neturei Karta was what the Bundist movement had determined. The Jewish Bundist diaspora movement had determined. All 8 of us in unison had determined that Neturei Karta International were the leaders of our generation. Now, for those of you who don't know what that means the only sect of Judaism with large numbers that could be said to have the Mizorah to this day would be Neturei Karta. If you don't know what the Mizorah is, I'm not sure how to explain that, except that we're talking about the rabbinite authority and whether they have the right to give ordinances, and edicts and stuff to the Jewish people. If you believe in the Mizorah and you don't agree with Neturei Karta, you're kind of a heretic. I'm just going to say that. That's that might be a bit, slight hyperbole. I don't mean to do that. If I am, I'm just saying, and there are other sects, but they're small. My family had been part of a very small Haredi sect, I guess you could call it Haredi, but that's another thing. Is I want to give a little debriefing here. Dr. Weisfeld mentions a small fringe Mizrahi group. I think I should clarify that within the Zionist state, there are actually 2 kinds of Mizrahim. There are the Zionist and the anti-Zionist, and there's almost never a neutral in between. The Mizrahim within the Zionist state are pretty much the same equivalent as black people within Canada, the United States, South America, and Europe. So Basically, the Mizrahim are the equivalent of black within the state of Israel, not the Ethiopian Jewry, which are a disenfranchised group, do not get me wrong, but they're largely co-opted mostly into the military, and they've lost their original Judaism. The actual Ethiopian Judaism is mostly gone. Thank you, Israel, for being guilty of wiping out Judaism. I mean, no, like, not thank you. But anyway, the point being, we're getting here to this next clip. I just wanted to explain that, so if anybody got confused with the statement. Haradim refers to ultra-Orthodox Jewry. Haradim, I'm not sure where that term developed, but everybody within Meir Shrim would refer to themselves as Haradim. Haredi refers to the ultra-Orthodox. That includes Hasid and non-Hasid, by the way. And in Meir Shrim, there are Ashkenazim, Mizrahim, Sephardim, converts. Oh yes, converts are in Meir Shrim. In my personal opinion, Meir Shrim is the holiest place in the world. Then those people, the people that their inhabitants are the holiest people in the world. That is my personal opinion. I am, of course, when I say that, speaking for myself. I am also stating that when I say that the Neturei Karta are the only ones with the Mizora, I'm not trying to say listen to Neturei Karta or else, or that all Jewry must comply to what I am saying. I'm talking about if you want to know about a strong religious authority that has the real lineage of, succession and scholarship all the way back, that can even be reached back to the time of Rambam versus the Zohar, and before then, Neturei Karta are pretty much the only ones that have kept that going, whether people like it or not. Neturei Karta does not care if you're Sephardi or Ashkenazi or Mizrahi. They don't care if you're Hasid or non-Hasid. What they care about is if you're upholding basically the Talmudic system, which you have to. If you are not with the Talmud, you're not with the Torah. And the Talmud is not compatible with Zionism or the Zionist state of Israel. And the reason for that is the three oaths, which are halakhically binding. It's one of the reasons why Neturei Karta has a hard time trusting Reform Judaism, Conservative Judaism, and Reconstructionist Judaism, because these forms of Judaism are known to pick and choose the mitzvot and the halakha basis, and as a result, there is that tendency to throw out the three oaths, which is binding to this day. Even if you don't believe in God anymore, even if you're not sure whether God exists or not, if you're still part of the Jewish nation, you still bleed with the Jewish people, you have to acknowledge that the three oaths are binding. And some would say, yeah, but that means that this miraculous Mashiach age will only happen through miraculous means. And so we might, all the more reason not to support. So you can't make up a religious excuse for Zionism because it goes against the three oaths. You can't even come up with a secular reason because all you'll be doing is showing yourself to be a fascist. So, sorry for the rant, but that expedition I felt was necessary. This came out on October 16th, 2023 on Al Jazeera.
As we see this last Saturday, it was shocking to the world, but the world doesn't seem to take in regard the 75 years that every day almost you have Palestinian death and suffering. But we as Jews do take this into consideration. It's not how I personally look at this. It's how, as a Jew who's observant, who's following the rules of the Judaism, of the Torah, Judaism is subservience to God. That's what it's all about. It's a religion of 3,000 years. While Zionism is a mere 150 years, it's a transformation to nationalism, to have a piece of land. It's a political movement, it's a materialistic movement. It was started by Jews who are non-religious, and they're simply incorporating, using the name Israel, using the Star of David, and claiming that it's a God, it's given to them by God. And we who are following the Torah, who are true to the Torah, stand up adamantly refuting what they're saying. The Torah clearly states that we shall not kill, we shall not steal, and the whole concept is strange, is totally antithetical to our teachings, contradictory. The Jewish community had been living together with the Muslim community and the Christian community, and since this movement started, and since they gained hold in the land and eventually got rule over the land, there's been endless bloodshed. There's hate that has grown thousandfold. It's a wedge driven between the Jews and the Muslims, and it's brought death and suffering to the Palestinian people in the majority, but to the Jewish populace also. As we see this last Saturday, it was shocking to the world, but the world doesn't seem to take in regard the 75 years that every day almost you have Palestinian death and suffering. But we as Jews do take this into consideration. We say this is clearly a rebellion against God, and it hurts us more than usual because it's being done in our name. And the rabbis you are seeing, the power bases that you are seeing in the settlements that is fringe to the Jewish communities, those are the ones who bought into this tale that it's God's wish. But the central part of Judaism, the very religious, in whatever country, maybe in Argentina, the very religious says, no, we're dead set against this. We cry with the Palestinians. And therefore, what's happening today in Gaza, that they're bombing them relentlessly, and they're pointing and they're accusing them of being animals. It's even hard to repeat, and whatever they say of them of being terrorists, it's not. It's all to cover their totally illegitimate occupation. And to that, I'll bring a simple proof. We lived together, the Jewish community, for hundreds of years in Palestine, in Egypt, Morocco, Tunisia, Iran, in all the countries we lived and flourished as religious Jews amongst religious Muslims without any human rights groups to protect us. We always lived together. We babysat each other's children, even though we have a distinctly different religion. And it was never a cause of animosity. All that changed is the introduction of Zionism, the control of the land. And since that came, which is not 1948, it's in the 1890s or so, and they started coming in and taking over the lands. Since then, there's death and suffering, the Palestinians and of the Jews, because they are creating this fear, this hate, this estrangement. We can show many pictures how the Jews live together. Anybody old Arab will tell you, and every old Jew, how we used to babysit each other's children, like I say, and help each other. And I've had many stories of people will tell us. So it's clearly what these Ben Gvir and these other people are saying. They are coming from Mizrahi. That is that segment that is religious Zionists, but not the central, what we call the Eid Chorei, this God-fearing community, and around the world. We stand in total opposition, and it hurts us, and we have no words for the suffering, the Palestinians. That's why we came out, let's say even today. Yes, we go out in tens of thousands, but we would have hundreds of thousands demonstrating constantly, but the fear of the repercussions from the Zionists, because they're vicious. We went out, 2 days ago to Manhattan. We demonstrated. I came back, the tar cars were slashed, the mirrors were broken. This is nothing to what they threat. They have death threats, and in Jerusalem and Al-Quds and in the other parts of occupied Palestine, they people get killed and arrested and so forth. So there's a reason why there's less of a voice that you will hear, even though our communities are full in opposition to Zionism. And we plead with the leaders today. It's very scary what today we are seeing. And there's assembled 300,000 soldiers at the gates of Gaza, and it's and of course the bombing there, and it's heartrending. There's no words, and we can only again plead with the world leaders and demand that this injustice, this criminality, this suffering of the Palestinian people has to be addressed. It must be stopped. One day this will end. It's against God. And we as Jews are crying and hurting with them and praying for them. And we go out tirelessly. Some of us go out all the time. I mean, we're doing this for years, and many of others. There's demonstrations in the front of the UN, and therefore we're going out. A lot of the media doesn't cover it because they know that they will be accused of being anti-Semitic. But we try. And we hope that with God's help, that with His compassion, that He will free them, and ultimately with a totally free Palestine, we as Jews will be able to show our tremendous gratification for the fact that we were embraced and taken in when we suffered in Europe. We went through crusades, inquisitions. It was the Muslim countries that took us in, and we flourished there. So we should be able to show again our gratefulness, and not to watch how they're being vilified. We hope it will happen soon in our days. And we apologize that what's being done in the name of Judaism.
Okay, so just to be clear again, he was referring to a small fringe settlement, the fringe settlers. There's settlers, which are bad people, but then there's the fringe settlers, which some of these people are Mizrahim. But that's also part of the problem of the Arab nation states that push Jewish people out. In that way, you can say that some of these Arab nation states are in cahoots with the state of Israel. Saudi Arabia, who's been in support of the state of Israel recently, is pretty much about to abandon that support because they wanted there to be some Palestinian, presence to be maintained. I mean, this threatens the relationship between Turkey and the Zionist state of Israel. Because even though Turkey has always acknowledged the state of Israel, they also always acknowledge Palestine. And Turkey's precious dream of a two-state solution just doesn't seem like it's going to work. It's Palestine or nothing. That's what has to be. The state of Israel has no right to exist. I also agree, though, that a no-state solution would be appropriate. I actually concede to most everything that is from Dr. Weisfeld's book, which he wrote for the Palestinians. It's called The Federation of Palestinian and Hebrew Nations. It highly parallels a lot of the views of the late Marvin Eliyahu. Now, I don't want to take up too much time. Sometimes I feel like explanation is necessary, so I've explained as best I could who Rabbi Weiss was talking about in reference to that Mizrahi fringe group. But the Rabbinite Council is definitely with Neturei Karta on this, and the Bundist movement is with Neturei Karta on this. So, long live the Jewish Socialist Bund, long live Palestine, but most of all, long live Gaza. Freedom for Gaza, liberation for Gaza, end the siege of Gaza. And I will bring you to this next clip from Al Jazeera. It's another clip from Al Jazeera. Al Jazeera gave a report on October 11th, 2023, which gives a better perspective on the position of Hamas. And I do hope everybody pays close attention. Share this video everywhere. Educate people because, it is I'm sure a lot of you who do watch this, especially fellow Jewry who watch this, are frustrated when we have to explain to the Gentiles our position. They assume either that we are with Israel and say, I support Israel as if they're your friend, even if you don't support Israel, or they blame you for what the state of Israel does. I run into both problems all the time. And nothing could be further from the truth. We do not support the state of Israel. But that being said, I'm getting off track again. Al Jazeera gave a report on October 11th, 2023, which gives out a real statement by Hamas. And I hope that this serves to educate people so that at least there's context. Context matters.
Marwan, even as I was listening to you, I was getting the information that we have a Hamas statement that has just been put out. And so I'm glad that I'm talking to you because I'd like to read it together and then get your reaction to it. Here is the statement. Hamas has rejected allegations that it committed crimes against women and children. This is the quote. Some Western media outlets continue to spread Zionist slander and lies about our Palestinian people and their resistance, which falsely and slanderously promoted allegations that members of the Palestinian resistance beheaded children and assaulted women without any evidence to support their lies and claims. Hamas strongly condemns the baseless allegations. Marwan, let's talk a little bit about this. This is significant because those accusations are something that have grown louder and louder over the last few days. Now, Hamas is clearly owning up to the fact that it deliberately killed, hundreds and hundreds of Israelis. But it seems they're saying there's a red line, and that we did not do.
Okay, so let's start with the latter part. There is no doubt, according, again, to the two scholars we just heard on Inside Story, that Hamas is in breach of international humanitarian law, that the way it took its action in Black Saturday against Israeli civilians and so on and so forth is in breach of international law. There is no doubt about that. And it could be defined as a terrorist act. Did it behead children and rape women and so on and so forth? No, because the news that first came out from the Los Angeles Times have already been retracted. So now it's just being, used as fake information on the web. And of course, as you know, the web, especially under Musk, you never know, how it will multiply and mutate throughout the world. But clearly, there was no beheading of children, and there is no such thing. But I think those who are trying to make the case for land invasion and for the annihilation not only of Hamas or even of the Palestinian people as animals, they're the ones who are already equating the 7/10 with 9/11, right? They're saying that what happened to Israel is a 9/11, and Hamas is like Al Qaeda, and Hamas beheads children, and Hamas is trying to be slick like ISIS, and Hamas hates the Jews, and as Biden said, its sole reason for existence is to kill Jews. So already there is a demonizing process by Israel and its pundits and its neoconservative allies in the United States and elsewhere to make the case for a repeat of the 2003 war or the 2011 invasion of Afghanistan, basically saying that Hamas is something like the United States has already experienced, and we know what the result is. And hence, there is no diplomacy or peace with Hamas. Hamas has to be dismantled, and it has to be defeated, and it has to be ended. That kind of comparison is, first of all, wrong. Second, it is sensationalist. And third, it will lead to the wrong decisions. Because Hamas, unlike Al-Qaeda, unlike ISIS, and so on and so forth, had a very particular nationalist agenda. And it never acted outside of the borders of Palestine. It doesn't have an international agenda. Hamas has always functioned within the parameters of historic Palestine. And even though it did take actions that are certainly could be defined as terrorist actions, this is a nationalist movement that used unsavory tactics, but they always stayed within the logic of resistance against what they call their occupiers of the past 55 years.
And Marwan, I think this is a really interesting and important point, because Hamas has not spoken that much since the beginning of this war. And what they have said, their statements so far have been about military things. The bombardment of Gaza, they publicly said that they would start killing people that they're holding captive if civilian targets in Gaza were hit without prior warning. That has been their communication so far. This statement, the one that I just read you and that you've been talking about, tells us one very, very simple thing, in addition to everything you've just said, that Hamas cares about its public image. Yes, they have killed hundreds of people, and they clearly own up to that. They're not denying it. And they have claimed responsibility for that attack. There is zero doubt about that. But they care about their public image.
Absolutely. This is a nationalist movement that prides itself of being, the protector of its people, the representative of its people. Let's not forget that back in 2006, they won the legislative elections, and they have remained popular, although they're not as popular in Gaza, but they are more popular in the West Bank. So the fact that their leaders have sacrificed once and again, and they spent decades in jail, it's still appreciated by a certain segment of the Palestinian people. I'm not sure all Palestinian people support the action of last weekend. I'm not sure how many do. We haven't conducted any surveys. But I'll tell you what it is in the eyes of Hamas and its supporters. This was a collective suicide attack, because all 1,500 Hamas fighters that went in did not leave. Right? They're all been killed. So this is in so many ways a collective suicide attack that took with them more than 1,000 Israelis, which is all in by itself is just, of course, horrific and tragic. But in the end of the day, they have not bombed Israel from the air. They have not stayed safe. These people sacrificed their lives to kill civilians and soldiers and so on and so forth. So they are involved in logic, guerrilla logic, asymmetrical warfare logic of resistance against occupation. And they've said for years, we've tried other ways and means, they did not work. And according to them, they are left with no other option but to resist Israel with force, with violence. They took that decisions, and now they're taking the responsibility for it. Unfortunately, a lot of people in Gaza, in addition to those in Israel, are paying the price. And I think, as you and I were speaking before Blinken, went on air, that the predictions about hundreds of thousands, perhaps tens of thousands, perhaps hundreds of thousands of deaths in Gaza, of course, is something that we all in this world must stop, must try to stop anyway. And to the last point about, just before I forget, which is the point about safe passage, right? Because this again goes to your point about Hamas. I'm not sure, what do they mean by safe patches? So they can, let out 1 million Gazans into the Sinai? Where are they going to go in the Sinai? What are they going to do in the Sinai? I mean, what are you going to do exactly? Like ship out 1 million people to where? Cairo? And what guarantees that they will be able to go back? Because the entire tragedy of this called Palestine started with the idea that Israelis threw them out and when they won't let them back in. So what guarantees, as soon as you make a safe passage, that these Palestinians will be allowed to come back, not to their homes, but to their alternative refugee camps and villages and so on and so forth in Gaza. Second, I'm not sure Hamas is going to allow it because it's afraid of exactly that, expulsion. This will be a safe passage, right? But it's a pretext to expulsion because that's what Israel does. It wants to ship as many people as possible. And third, no one in Palestine, including the Palestinian Authority and Hamas, do not want to make Israel's job easier for the Israeli army, right? Because now it's not exactly that they're hiding behind civilian population. They are part of the civilian population. This is not a professional army. They are the young men and women of Gaza, and they are fighting occupation. So their parents and grandparents and cousins of these fighters and so on, they live there, right? So that's their families there. That's what makes this conflict, this asymmetrical conflict, so complicated and so tragic. And Israel knows that. And that's why we keep talking about the fact that there is no military solution to this. Even Hamas, once it's destroyed militarily and administratively, how are they going to destroy the idea of Hamas? The idea of Hamas is apparently more popular in the West Bank and in the Palestinian refuge camps than it is in Gaza. And once you destroy Hamas, how are you going to destroy the idea of Hamas in Gaza, which is the idea of resistance until justice is attained?
I think that what cannot be stressed enough is that doing one or two terrorist actions does not make a group or individual terrorist. And it needs to be understood that terrorism is a tactic of the desperate. That's why the war on terror concept is such bullshit. A terrorist is someone who specializes in terrorism. Terrorism is the terror tactic, or a tactic of terror. Hamas is not a terrorist group per se. At the very worst, you could say that it is an extreme militant group, and at the best, you can actually say it's a humanitarian group. One of the best things that ever happened to me personally was Dr. Weisfeld educating me and correcting me on the group Hamas. And since he had educated me, I have continued to learn more about this group. Hamas is nothing like Al-Qaeda or ISIS, and let's be real, ISIS is nothing like Al-Qaeda. If we get really into these things, these groups are not really comparable to each other. Hamas is a offshoot, is basically the Palestinian offshoot of the Muslim Brotherhood, and they divested from the Muslim Brotherhood. They were democratically elected by the people of Gaza because the frustration at the lack of action from Al-Fatah or the PLO. This next clip is a video from the early years of YouTube, which at least goes back. I'm not sure when this came out, because the original appearance of this video from what I know about, cannot be found on YouTube. Maybe you can find it, but I have not been able to find it. But it goes at least as far back as 2008. A Jewish Yemenite living in Israel explains why the name of the God of Judaism is Allah. Allah is the God of Judaism, as well as Islam, and as well as Christianity. So this clip, I hope, enlightens, and I hope it helps to serve to combat Islamophobia.
As a Yemenite Jew, I can tell you that the name itself is not the devil, is not a pagan idol, is not the moon god, as evangelical Christians have been propagating for decades. This is a very, very sick cult, by the way, and their idiocy is quite redundant. I mean, I can't even imagine if people would actually teach themselves these things and flatter themselves with these things, and at the same time claim to support Israel, when in actuality in Israel we say Allah, we say Yallah, we say these terms, these phrases are understandable to our understanding, that they are not in any way, shape or form to what they say, to what evangelical Christians say is basically the devil. No, we understand what the name Allah means, what it signifies. Take the dictionary of the Hebrew language. I take the dictionary and I actually took the name of God, which is, through etymology, is the three letters Aleph, Lamed, Veh. Basically, I wrote it down. I know I don't have the whole thingamajigs on. You get the idea. So basically, Aleph, Lamed, Veh. This in Hebrew means, see, that's the thing. Without the vowels, because the dots, the nikud, the dots are the vowels right here. These are vowels beneath the letters, indicate how the word itself is to be pronounced. So I'm going to block these right now for a second, but I'm going to show you. This right here, in my understanding, because I'm going to say what it is, this says God. Elah is God in Hebrew. Now, with these two right here, with these two vowels, this is the Fatah Sagol, Fatah Sagol. This would indicate that this would turn the word God, which without these vowels it would be God, Elah. Now it would be Olo, Olo. Olo means a curse, an oath, or a covenant. Christian evangelicals love to use this. They like to say, but you see, Allah, with these vowels, indicates that Allah is a curse. Therefore, the Muslims are worshipping an evil God who was a curse onto humanity. These evangelical Christians, they're nutcases, they're nutbags. And I took it upon myself further to actually see how they got this idea that Allah, the Arabic name of God, is a curse, and more recently is the devil. I don't know how they do it, but they do it. Allah is not the devil. God forbid. May God even forgive me for saying such horrible things. But here's the Hebrew version of the Arabic name Allah once it is written in Hebrew. The Arabic name Allah has 4 consonants because Hebrew is like Arabic. It's almost similar. Same alphabet, same thing, just different script. This is the Arabic name of God. This is how the script is. This is when it's connected, because Arabic is a cursive language. This is the connected form, but however, it is 4 letters. 1, 2, 3, and 4. I'm going to have to baby you guys into this. Now this is the name of God, Allah in Arabic, but broken up. So that way each letter is given its position. This is Aleph, this is Lam, this is Lam, this is Ha. So Allah. Okay. Now this right here, Allah in the Arabic script, this is how it would become rendered in the Hebrew rendition. That way, Allah in Hebrew would be Aleph, Lamed, Lamed, He. Okay. Now, how do we get this? Which this right here is, this basically means cursed. And the only reason why this means it's cursed because of these 2 vowels. There are 7 letters in the Hebrew language that look like this, that have these 3 consonants. There are 7 Hebrew words in the Hebrew language that have these 3 consonants, and they're both the same. How do Hebrew-speaking Jewish people or non-Jewish people know? How do they differentiate? How do they know when a curse means a curse and God means God? Because this right here, without the vowels, this literally means God. This right now I'm just God. This says Ella. Ella. Now with the vowels, it means Ola, which means a curse. Look at this right here. I'm actually going to write down the proper Hebrew name of God with the correct pronunciation. This is how we know. This is how we could tell when God is God and when the letter represents, or when the word is God, or when the word means curse. Okay. There we go. Notice the symbol, notice the vowels. This becomes A, and this dot right here, the holom, it becomes Alo. Alo. Olo and Alo. Olo, Alo. Can you see the difference? This right here, though they have the exact same letters, everything is rendered the same thing. However, the use of vowels in the Hebrew language allows us to make distinctions between the understandings of what the words mean, what they imply. This may mean curse, but this at the same time may mean God. Okay, that's fine. In Arabic, God can also be written without using 2 L's. So it could actually be Alif, Lam, the He. So, Ilah, which is the exact same thing as Allah. Their understanding of how they approach God is exquisitely the same. We do not share the system of belief with Christians that they and us worship the same God. No, we do not. So help me God. But Christian evangelicals do not worship the God of Israel. They do not worship the Islamic perspective of God. Maimonides, one of our greatest philosophers in Judaism, as well as a religious philosopher of Judaism, has quoted extensively in his beautiful Igeret Teman, or the Epistle to Yemen, in which he was basically teaching and giving, basically answering many questions brought forward to him. The Jews of Yemen asked, what is your position of Muslims? Are they considered idol worshippers? Are they considered paganists? And Maimonides said, the Muslims, the idolatry has been removed from their hearts. A Muslim does not know idolatry, he does not know paganism, he has no form of whatsoever of any grain left in his heart. Therefore it is permitted unto a Jew, when he enters a land where he cannot find a synagogue, that he is allowed to pray in a Muslim mosque. He is okay, it's fine, it's okay. Hey, I can go to a Muslim mosque and pray if I have to, if I can't find a shul. However, Maimonides says, be careful. If a Jew enters a land where there is no mosque or a synagogue, then he is forbidden to enter a Christian church if there is one. Do not pray in a Christian church. And the reason why is because Christians do not worship the same God we do. They worship a pagan. They are idolaters. They are called Avodah Zarah in Hebrew, which means idol worshippers. So exquisitely said, so wonderfully stated. Oh my goodness! And you know, it's quite interesting that unfortunately there should be more Jews actually stating the facts as it is. That you know, Muslims and Jews and Muslims, we both worship the same God. No matter what these crazy evangelical Christians are saying, they're basically nutbags. Whatever they say, they just try to come up with exceeding lies, redundant lies. The type of lies that only a child in the kindergarten could easily make up, and emphasize that Arab Christians, and you know, this is what's also funny, and thankfully I remember this, because this is what I really wanted to say, and get a load of this, Christian evangelics. I should refer to you guys as evangelics. There are actually 20 million Arab Christians in the Middle East today, as well as the United States, as well as around the world. And Arab Christians and their religious services, and their Sunday services, and Mass, or whatever God frickin' services they have, Arab Christians refer in the Arabic Bible, the Arabic translation of the Bible, they say Allah in reference to God. Now, I would like to ask these evangelicals, what say ye of these people who claim to believe in your Jesus? What say ye to them? Now, are you going to go chase them and say, oh, you're worshiping the devil. The devil is Allah. Just lets you know that classical Arabic is very close to classical Hebrew, biblical Hebrew, as well as classical Aramaic. They all tend to agree, they all agree in unison that Allah, Hashem, Allah are, through etymology, which is the study of the root of words, have come to a unanimous agreement that Allah is the perfect Arabic name of God, that it cannot be made into a male. Through its perfection, it cannot be made into a male gender nor a female gender. Rather, it is a neutral personification, not personification, but rather a neutral attribute to God. Such wonderful history.
This next presentation is a very enlightening conversation between Dr. Weisfeld, the Jewish Bundist, and Steve Struggle, the Black Panther.
Well, here now is quite something today.
It sure
Pointed out
is.
to me, there's an offensive by Hamas against the state of Israel.
There sure is.
Large scale, this time, this is it. Well, this government is going to be very, bloody. It's going to try to pulverize Gaza, but Palestinians are ready for it. They're ready to fight. So, this is not just a one-way fight anymore. This is no longer just Israel and the military, bashing the Palestinians day after day, killing Palestinians day after day, every day. Now, it's, the table is turned.
Well, that's the when I sent out my communiques this morning, asking people when will they rally outside the Israeli embassy, or how will the world show their support for Palestinian freedom?
Yeah,
I kind of just raise the question: will you show support? Because it seems as though Israel is immune from any kind of criticism when it comes to the West Bank, Gaza, or and the Golan Heights. Israel can do Israel have the Golan Heights. People forget about the Golan Heights. They're still from Syria. So we spoke a few months ago about the prior Palestinian attacks inside I want to say inside the West Bank. There were some fighters who had come together, different forces. And we have no way of knowing if these are the same forces or if they're different forces. However, what the Israelis tend to forget is that people who are oppressed are going to fight back. Because whenever you are an oppressor, I think history will show that you become immune to the suffering that you're causing. You actually don't care. You actually don't care because you're in charge. You're in charge. I'm the boss. You are my subordinate, and you are to stay in line. And at a certain point, people are going to say, "Look, we're tired of this, and we will set the rules of engagement, not you." So that's what happened. That's what happened yesterday. Whoever is initiating this conflict in the sense of initiating armed self-defense does not care about the rules of engagement because they have said they have to know Israel will counterattack. They're quite aware of that. They have to know that. So what will Israel do and have the fighters taking that into account? Because Israel can do what it wants to do, but does your enemy have they already taken that into account? There could be traps.
Yeah.
And also as a state, what will it show the world what kind of state it is? This is interesting because they were clearly caught off guard. They were clearly caught off guard. They had no way. They were clearly caught off guard.
Completely.
As I understand it, there's a prison somewhere either in Gaza or somewhere nearby that if it wasn't liberated was was attacked. They didn't expect to be attacked. No, they did not. No. So they were caught off guard. Anyway, every caught off guard is just like the Tet Offensive during the Vietnam War. U.S. didn't know what to do. They were coming from everywhere. They didn't know what to do. I mean, eventually, it passed, and the United States lost the war. The United States did lose the war. Let's be clear about that. The United States did not win Vietnam. But I think this time, Israel, the CIA, Britain, maybe France. What should we do? It's going to be wow. They got us. Oh no.
Yeah.
I just want to let people know any way we can support the Palestinian cause. We should support the Palestinian cause. We should.
Yeah.
And people, if it was not a good time, well, when is a good time?
This is tomorrow we have a demonstration here in Montreal, and I expect it's going to be big. But this is such a surprise, for Israel. They had no idea, in spite of all their intelligence services, in spite of all their network of informers, didn't work.
Yes, and that means the network of informers did not get into this group.
So they, the Palestinian society is so well organized now, they know who the informers are, and they know how to isolate them, so they have evaded, Israel state control. Yeah, for sure.
Yes, and I think that's important to let the Palestinians know, job well done on that one, because many times Israel sends its spies in. They have a network of spies and collaborators who are looking to destroy the Palestinian cause. And however they were able to avoid detection, they did a good job on that one.
And the strategy of, taking prisoners of soldiers and civilians, I suppose, nearby, Gaza, that's quite an effective strategy as well. I mean, the simpler thing would have been, to eliminate, as many people as they could. But that's not, their strategy. That's not, what the message that they're trying to create. They're taking prisoners in order to negotiate. Now, Israel is not going to negotiate. This Israeli government is incapable of negotiating. Its whole reason for existence is not to negotiate with the Palestinians. So they're not going to, they're going to use, their air power to bash the Palestinians again, but it's not going to work. The Palestinians are so united, so into it, that they know that they have to fight in order to protect themselves, because it's either like a slow war inflicted from one side against the Palestinians only, or it's an open war between both sides at the same time, which Israel cannot cope with, because they cannot explain why they're at war with the Palestinians, when in fact the Palestinians are willing to negotiate. So the government cannot explain why a war is necessary, first of all. Second of all, this Israeli government, what did they have to say about the welcoming of a Nazi into the Canadian House of Commons Parliament here in Canada?
Yes.
Nothing, no statement from Israel whatsoever, So
unbelievable.
Yeah. So what kind of government is this? Is this the government, that claims, to be defending the Jewish people? Yeah, they can claim that, but that's just the words, when it actually comes down to it, they don't defend the Jewish people. All they're defending, is the military of Israel. That's it. That's all. Israel is useless as far as as Jewish concerns and Jewish security and Jewish safety is concerned. Israel does nothing to oppose, the Nazis, who are pro-Zionist, as well. And Israel has done nothing to denounce, the anti-Semites, who are opposed to the presence of Jewish Americans, but who support Israel. What's the story behind this? Which is it? Israel or the Jewish people? You can choose, and Israel has chosen Israel only. And they couldn't care less about the Jewish people. That's demonstrated, by the fact that they can't even come out with a statement against the honoring of a Nazi here in Canada. Even the Canadian government has not been able to come out with a real apology You know, this is, you know, very scandalous. Now, what's going to happen here in the Jewish community?
May I speak to that? May I speak to that issue you just raised?
Yes.
Thank you. I want to speak to the two issues that you just raised. One, now that we know Israel has not taken a stand against a Nazi being feted by a NATO member,
Mm. Mm-hmm.
And they said, with which they have, I'm sure, diplomatic relations with Canada. I'm sure they do.
Mm.
And they said nothing.
Mm.
See, what also Zelensky was there and applauding, physically seen applauding this fascist murderer. Ukraine said nothing. So clearly, at least in public's public view, Ukraine and Israel turn an eye or show support for Nazism.
Yeah, turn their back to the Jewish people. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But that's the second thing that you mentioned that I found interesting. If we see Israel, if Israel purports to be a government which defends people who are Jewish or of Israeli ancestry internationally, how could it not say anything about the Nazi being feted in Canada?
Yeah.
It brings a true exposure of who they really are. I mean, because, you know, and that's a very good point you make.
Yeah.
Because this issue of a government, let me just say this. One of the real crises, one of the real disasters of the international slave trade and the Berlin Conference is that Black people around the world have no Black government they can turn to for support. I'm not saying Israel is good in that regards, but if it says it's supposed to do something, then they should be called on a carpet to do it. And the situation in Montreal, in Ottawa, was so egregious, was so scandalous. For Israel to say nothing requires the Jewish people and the people of Israeli citizenship around the world to condemn it in no uncertain terms. And to me, like I said about the Canadians, should call for its ouster. They should be ousted.
Yeah.
Some things you just can't do. You can't let certain things slide. No, you cannot. And when certain offenses are made against your people internationally, you can't let it slide. You'll say, no, we're opposed to this. This is an outrage. Even if you just say that and do nothing else, you've done something. You have the weight of the government behind you. And I still say Canadians must demand the end of the ouster of the government, with or without an apology.
Yeah, this government
every party in the government was applauding the fascist. All of them.
Yeah. Yeah, Social Democrats as well. Yeah. There was one though who wasn't applauding.
Good.
This came out. It was the wife of Zelensky. She did not applaud. She just sort of tapped her hand, you know, but she was, you know, visibly, you know, like uncomfortable. And then the next day, you know, what Zelensky did, you know, this has not really made the news. Zelensky made a declaration in the Ukrainian parliament upholding and making the founder of the Organization of Ukrainian Nationalists, OUN, which, you know, to which, you know, Bandera, you know, the Nazi, you know, like was a member of, an operative of, you know, like, but the founder was feted as a national hero of the Ukraine.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now they
So
claim to be nationalists, okay, but do they ever talk about, the great Ukrainian liberator who was Makhno, the anarchist Ukrainian who was fighting for the independence of the Ukraine against the White Army of the monarchical aristocrats of the White Army of Kornilov, and who came into the Ukraine, to attack Russia, and the anarchists, were fighting against the White Army, and who was fighting against the anarchists? Both the White Army and the Red Army of Trotsky. So the Red Army and the Black Army were fighting each other, because the Red Army wanted to incorporate Ukraine into Russia under, Trotsky, Bronstein. And meanwhile, Lenin, comes out with a proclamation that the Ukraine has a right to self-determination. Like it's such a, a mess, when it comes to Ukraine.
Yes, it is.
Especially,
it is a mess.
when anarchists, and the communists were slaughtering each other, like over the Ukraine. And Banda and Makhno, who was this, great, anarchist, fighter for, the Ukraine and against, the Tsarist Empire, it's not even mentioned by Zelensky. Not even mentioned, never mentioned, by any of them. This exposes, that regime, that nationalist regime, as being not Ukrainian nationalist, but just, plain, fascist. Because, they're just extolling, the fascist Ukrainians, and they have nothing to say about, the anarchist Ukrainian who was the first to fight against the Tsarist Empire for the independence of the Ukraine. And now this Israeli government also, claims to be, nationalist, defending the Jewish people, but it's not. Didn't have anything to say about, the fitting of the Nazi in the Canadian Parliament. Has nothing to say about, the Zionist supporters in the United States who are a bunch of fascists, anti-Semites. And, what's the use of Israel then, if it claims to be there existing, to defend Jewish people, and that the Jewish people should be supporting it because it's defending the Jewish people? Where is that coming from? That's just words. It's not real. It is unreal.
Well, let me ask you this. You raised a good point to make me think about something. What could be the role of the Jewish people in the diaspora towards this question? Because I'm still saying this question is far from dead, and that people have the responsibility to bring Israel to task on this. That's my view. And who better to do it than the Jewish community in the diaspora? I mean, or perhaps there are better ways of doing this. But I do think what you just said needs to be amplified and shared broadly. That Israel said nothing.
That's right.
And Israel can't not say anything. If anybody must condemn this, it must be Israel. And the fact they have not is a statement.
Yeah.
And also, just like the Jewish community said, it doesn't want to let you in as a second generation Holocaust survivor. Even those organizations have to be questioned.
Yeah.
On this, you cannot be silent. On this, you cannot be silent.
Yeah.
Anyway, no.
There's been a move, this week as well, probably as a result of the House of Commons fitting of the Nazi and Nazism, basically. Mondoweiss, which is one of the main Jewish opposition groups, Mondoweiss has come out, with a new organization called Jews Against White Supremacy. And what they mean by white supremacy is Zionism. Explicitly anti-Zionist organization, has now developed, which is picking up, the Jewish Bundist concepts of fighting against anti-Semitism in the name of the Jewish people, but not in the name of, a nationalist, state organization that is only, seeking to build its own power and develop its own national bourgeoisie. No, that's not the way to go. The way to go is for Jewish people to take control of their own communities, where they are living, here in Canada, it's already started. The Jewish organizations here have broken, from the Zionist, agenda, and they've all denounced, the Canadian government, even though the Liberal Party was, a favorite of the Jewish community organizations for so long.
Good.
They've denounced this government, and they're calling for the prosecution of Nazi war criminals. There was a big inquiry done, Duchenne Commission of inquiry into the presence of Nazis, who were allowed into Canada after the Holocaust. And, this study has, the list of names of all these Nazis here in Canada. And that part of the study, was kept secret by the Canadian government. Now the Jewish organization is saying, we've got to, make these names public, and these people have got to be prosecuted.
Good.
This has never been done before, and now it's being done. Yeah.
Good. Well, I would like for that story to get out. If you could please provide me with some news clips, links, or any sources about that story. What I'm saying is, this story has to stay alive.
Mm-hmm.
If we don't keep it alive, Abraham, that story will be killed by the mass media.
Yeah.
They want, it's over with now. But I also want to talk about, can you give us any updates on Trudeau's so-called apology? Well, I heard he apologized about something. What exactly happened this week on that?
Nothing. I think he's trying to ignore it, they think this is going to blow over, but, the leading, Jewish figure in Canada, Erwin Kotler from the Liberal Party, a candidate for the Liberal Party. I ran against him in an election one time even. He is supposedly the voice of the Jewish community in Canada, when it comes to civil rights and all this, and he's a great defender of Rwanda and supposedly, like he was defending Mandela and all this, he's supposed to be a big name. Okay. Professor, okay. Well, he has come out, calling on the Canadian government, to reveal the secret parts of the Duchenne Commission of inquiry into the presence of Nazis in Canada. So that means he's breaking, with the Liberal Party leadership, which is a very good sign. So if he does it, then all the rest of the Jewish community is going to break from the Liberal Party as well. It's going to split. Some are going to go to the Conservative Party, some are going to go to the NDP,
right?
Which is led by a Sikh leader, a Sikh man, Sikh Canadian. And so it provides, something of an alternative, to the Anglo-Saxon supremacy, and its collaborators amongst the Québécois, like Trudeau. So that power base, is going to be broken. It's going to be cracked up. It's going to be, it's going to be, bypassed here in Canada as a result of this scandal. Now, and now I can also go back into the Jewish Community Center, next month, to speak to this. I have, the credibility, to speak to the Jewish community now, that the Zionists do not have. The Zionists, do not have the backup of the Israel government even, they're cut loose, now, they're having to fight, anti-Semitism on their own, without the backing of the Israel government, because the Israel government is supporting Ukraine, supporting Zelensky, and in effect supporting the Nazis, so, like they're caught in contradiction.
I wish we could do a show specifically on that, because this is, again, for our brothers and sisters in the diaspora, in Canada, in Israel. We need to show how support for Ukraine is on its face against the national interests of Jewish people.
Yeah. So now we can defend the Jewish people as a nation, but not Israel nation, not the Israel state, So now we see there's a fundamental division between, the Israeli, a nation state and the Jewish people as a nation. Two different things.
Yeah, I really do think that that is a idea we need to deepen our discussion on.
Yeah.
And the reason why I say that is if we can deepen that discussion and create some avant-garde breaking ground discussions, conversations about that, we'll be serving historically the greater needs of this broad Jewish nation that you're talking about.
Yes. And then
Because Israel is a fraud.
yeah. Yeah.
The people who live in Israel are not fraudsters per se, but Israel is a fraud.
Yeah.
And this recent example and what you're talking about can show the fraudulent nature of what it claims to be,
Yeah.
and what it actually is doing.
Yeah.
That's always the sign of a hypocrite. Do you march? Do you talk? Do you walk the walk that you talk?
Yeah. Yeah. So, this division is going to crack open, the relationship, with the Palestinians as well, because Israel has refused to negotiate. So now that the Palestinians are retaliating, and the Jewish people know that Israel government is not going to be speaking for them, Jewish people are going to say, well, like Israel, get down to it, negotiate with the Palestinians, because obviously you, are not solving the problem. Not even by military means. Israel is incapable militarily of stopping the Palestinians from resistance. Okay, so that's exposed. Israel's military might is exposed now. So either they, increase military, repression of the Palestinians, which means, increased resistance. So either, the Zionists, will go for that. But the Jewish people were not. Jewish people were going to say, why do we want, a bigger war? No way, when this can be resolved, by negotiations. And then it'll become revealed that Hamas has actually offered to negotiate with the state of Israel on the basis of mutual recognition of each other, So, Hamas has been asked, to recognize the state of Israel. Okay, so Hamas has replied, okay, we'll recognize Israel if Israel recognizes Palestine. As a negotiating partner, which means that it has, right to independence. Now, when this becomes, revealed, when the confrontation goes on for a while, and then finally, Hamas is going to say, okay, you want to end this? Okay, we're prepared to end this, but only by negotiations. So are you prepared to negotiate? Yes or no? And they can say this in front of the whole world. And so, when Hamas says this, the Jewish people are going to say, yes, let's negotiate. Let's end this, war, finally. And then Israel say, no, we don't want to negotiate, because, Hamas is a terrorist organization. Well, if Hamas is a terrorist organization, so is Israel. There's no difference. War is war. So, I think this could be a breaking point. And beginning, with the Nazi Gate, in Ottawa, Canada.
Nazi, good name for it, Nazi Gate. It's a very good name for it, Nazi Gate.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Incredible.
Yeah. Well, I think what you just had another brilliant idea there to use the current offensive by Hamas and the Palestinians against Israel, use it diplomatically and politically.
Yeah.
Because what you're saying is these military exchanges are due to the political oppression and economic oppression.
Huh.
So why can't the international community support the right of self-determination of the Palestine and demand negotiations?
Yeah.
Because when Israel takes the position of Ukraine, and Ukraine will not negotiate with Russia, and Israel will not negotiate with Palestinians,
yeah.
then you are equating Israel with Ukraine, and also the United States, as Israel backers, because a peace framework could be created. This is good.
Yeah.
A framework for peace that could be monitored. It could be monitored, could be established.
Yeah.
But Israel does not want to be monitored.
Yeah. No. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
No, Israel. But if the international Jewish community, the Israeli community internationally applies its soft power and its pressure, its status, if it will once again establish its status, Israel could be forced to negotiate.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, it would probably take an international movement of predominantly Jewish people. That's what it would take.
Yeah, yeah, that's what it'll take, you know, because the rest of the, you know, pressure doesn't work on Israel, you know, like, no, it doesn't matter, you know, who says anything, you know, United States can, you know, like even, you know, is ignored by Israel. So
right. But if it's led by a broad-based, peace-oriented, Jewish-led international movement, even if Israel says it is ignoring it, it cannot ignore it.
No, they can't ignore the Jewish people. Yeah.
You say you speak for us, okay? We're not saying you don't need to exist as a state. No, we're saying this conflict needs to end.
Yeah.
And this recent military attack on Israel is an indication of a conflict that needs to come to an end.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Hamas is in a position now to offer peace negotiations, you know, can say to Israel, you know, we're willing to negotiate, you know, for a peace settlement. And so Israel's not going to accept that. And so the Jewish people are going to say, you know, like, we want peace. Therefore, you know, like we're supporting, you know, we would have to support, you know, the Hamas demand against, you know, Israel's intransigence. So, you know, this is a dividing point, you know, this is a breaking point, you know, of the Jewish community from the state of Israel. Yeah.
I think we should come back to this in subsequent conversations. What is the chatter among the within the diaspora? Are there people in Israel that can be worked with along these lines?
Yeah,
I think again you made a very good point. This weekend's military advances are the result of a historical oppression. That is why this does not occur, because there's some evil people in the West Bank, I mean, or in Gaza, that hate us, and we have to defend our. No, that's not what's going on.
Yeah.
This is due to something historically you have done. You set the West Bank up. West Bank isn't something that exists in reality. It's something you set up.
Yeah.
You put somebody over there.
Yeah.
You lock them up in the Gaza and the West Bank. You create this. Therefore, you're responsible for ending it.
Yeah.
And how could these young men be so desperate to fire rockets, to attack your cities, to ram cars, to try to liberate prisoners, to take Israeli prisoners, Israeli soldiers prisoner?
Yeah.
That's an act of military sophistication due to desperation.
Yeah.
But
they have no choice. This is only the beginning, you know, because this is Hamas fighting. Then there's Islamic Jihad. Then there's Fatah, which has to come into this as well. You know, if Israel escalates, then Fatah's going to have to come in to defend the Palestinians. Then there's Hezbollah in Lebanon, ready, willing, and able, you know, to take on Israel, you know, from the north. You know, this is, and then, you know, like if, you know, there's even the possibility that, you know, Syria might do something about the Golan Heights, you know, to take it back, that Syrian territory. You know, and then, you know, if it grows, you know, to that point, then Egypt can step in as well. So it's, this is, you know, big stuff. This is, you know, something that Israel cannot contend with, you know, and Israel is going to have to either go crazy or have to back down. And this government, you know, they're already, you know, like only standing on one leg, you know, because of the protests, you know, from the opposition Zionists, you know, the Zionists who are opposing the Zionist government of Israel, you know, like is there as well, still ongoing. And every week, you know, big demonstrations of 50,000, 100,000, you know, this is happening at the same time. And I don't think it's going to stop, because of this confrontation. It's going to continue. And they had better learn, to develop a program, to call for negotiations. And because that's the only sort of program that's possible. Otherwise the conflict continues and increases. So, they have no choice but to call for negotiations. So I look forward, to the Israel Zionist opposition, picking up a demand, to oppose this government as well on the basis of calling for negotiations with Hamas. So
let me ask you this. What you're saying is when Israel attacks Gaza, which we have to assume is already doing or will soon do within the next 24 hours.
Yeah.
You're saying that Fatah and other formations will be required to engage.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And there's already, like the basis for this opposition in the popular resistance committees. And the brigades, of Jenin and Nablus, exist already.
Right.
And, this goes beyond, this includes, members of both Fatah, Islamic Jihad, Hamas, and TPLF, the Marxist organization. They're all in the popular resistance committees. So they're all connected, and they can all, unify the opposition and the resistance, on this basis and increase the level of confrontation with Israel in the West Bank as well as in Gaza. So, I think that this week is going to be, a determining event in the history of Palestine. And we can look forward, to Israel being forced to back down. I think this is when it's going to happen. And, Israel, the United States were, trying to negotiate, normalization with Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is not going to, establish, diplomatic relations with Israel in the midst, of a confrontation, like this, with the resistance, Palestinian resistance. And in fact, Saudi Arabia is going to be in a position to demand, that Israel negotiate with Hamas to end this confrontation. So Israel is going to get the pressure, from all around. So if, Saudi Arabia demands, Israel negotiate, the United States is going to have to as well. Otherwise, they will break their relations with Saudi Arabia, more so than it has already been done. Economically, Saudi Arabia has broken from the United States. Now it's a question of political break from Israel and the United States, as a result of this confrontation here. So we don't have much time left, but I think you're right on, to judge this as a determining event in the history, of Palestine. This is the point at which, there's going to be a break from the Israel by the United States, by Saudi Arabia, and by the Jewish community as well.
Well, I appreciate talking to you, Abraham, and I hope that next week or our next show, we continue this conversation and bring some updates and further analysis.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is a determining factor. Great.
Right.
This is some of the most incredible dialogue, ridiculously underrated, and hopefully for those that view this video, they can share it everywhere so that they can see, just at least to see, the conversation between Dr. Weisfeld and Steve Struggle. They did very well. They have educated, so many people. And they work, they're like, these two are what I would say is like the revolutionary socialist duel, this civil rights duel, Dr. Weisfeld and Steve Struggle. Very good. And so this will end now with a presentation. This presentation is from AJ Plus. And I hope everybody pays attention, and this is yet another reason to share this video, so that, when you watch all of these things together, you end up with a better context. That's why when I put these videos together for the Bundist movement, I do so to, bring perspective. I give my 2 cents from the best of my perspective and other perspectives, that can coalesce into a coherent, program to share as a form of education. This next video, which came from AJ Plus, which this entire video presentation ends on this presentation, which came out on December 5th, 2022, from AJ Plus.
I'm in Bethlehem, the city believed to be the birthplace of Jesus. But because Bethlehem is a Palestinian city in the Israeli-occupied West Bank, it's surrounded today by a massive concrete wall, military checkpoints, and illegal settlements.
It's imposing a system of control that I'm sure Jesus was very familiar of. If he's born today, he would be born on our side of the wall.
Over the decades, the percentage of Christians living in Bethlehem and the occupied Palestinian territories has plummeted, rendering them practically invisible. Did you know there were Palestinian Christians before coming here?
No, I didn't.
مسيحية طلعت من هون يعني المفروض هو يكونوا أوعى من هيك.
So what happened to all the Christians? To find out, I'm here to ask the Palestinian Christians that remain.
It's a big issue for us that one day the Holy Land will become without Christians.
This is the Church of the Nativity in Bethlehem, one of the holiest sites in Christianity. This spot right here is believed to be exactly where Jesus was born. But down the street at a different church, I'm attending a Sunday service led by Palestinian pastor Munthir Ishaq. He says every year there are fewer Palestinian Christians in his congregation.
In our church, there's a lot of old people whose children live outside, and it makes me worry a lot about 20, 30 years from now. Will there be Christians in Palestine? That's really our biggest nightmare.
Around the year 1900, Christians made up about 11% of the population of what was historically called Palestine. That's now down to less than 2% in all of Israel and the occupied territories. The decline is much more pronounced here in Bethlehem. 70 years ago, the area was 80% Christian. Today, that number is only 12%. Why are the numbers of Christians specifically dwindling here?
Like all Palestinians, we live under Israeli reality, Israeli oppression. Here in the West Bank, in Bethlehem, we live under the Israeli military occupation, where we suffer from restrictions of movements, very limited opportunities economically. Overall, the quality of life here is very difficult. This used to be the main road in Bethlehem. And then the wall cut really in the middle of the road. And what used to be one of the liveliest streets or roads in Bethlehem is now this dead area as a result. To us, Jesus was one of our own. We look at him as a Palestinian Jew. He was born here. And I think even if he's born today, he would be born on our side of the wall, because Jesus was born under the occupation, under the Roman Empire.
Israel began building the wall here in Bethlehem in 2002 in what it says was an attempt to stop Palestinian attackers from entering its territory. But rather than building the wall on the boundary between Israel and the West Bank, it was built deep inside the occupied Palestinian territories. That left massive areas of Palestinian land inaccessible to their owners on one side of the wall, while keeping Palestinians confined on the other side. While walking through Bethlehem, I spoke with Samir Lolas, who crafts and sells souvenirs made from olive wood. The wall is just a few feet away from the front door of his shop.
لك صراحة يعني الجدار هذا مشكلة على بيت لحم كبيرة. أنا كان المحل يسوى مصاري، كان شغل كويس. كيف بدي أقول لك؟ كيف اللي حاطين على كلب الواحد صخرة مش قادر، يعني هذا على كلوبنا صخرة. هذا مفروض ينكان يعني مش مفروض يضل.
The wall cuts off access to most of Bethlehem's farmland, and in the north, it completely blocks off the route to Jerusalem, another city Christians consider holy, which is just over 5 miles away.
It makes us wonder whether if Jesus was here today and wants to go to Jerusalem, would he need a permit to go to Jerusalem?
Because you do. Everybody here does, right?
Everybody here does.
Israel has imposed this permit system on Palestinians living in the West Bank and Gaza since 1993. To leave those territories, even if it's to worship at Jerusalem's holy sites, Palestinians have to apply for Israeli permits that are often rejected. In 2022, many local Christians were banned from attending Easter celebrations at the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, where Jesus is believed to have been buried.
it was very upsetting to see. As a Christian, that I and others like me can't go to one of our important ceremonies in Easter, the most important ceremony. This is, of course, part of a much larger violation of Palestinian Christians' right to religion.
Because like other Palestinians, Christians have faced violence and attacks from the Israeli state and settlers alike. One shocking recent example of an attack on Christians at the hands of Israel was this. In May 2022, Israeli forces attacked the funeral procession of Palestinian Christian and renowned Al Jazeera journalist Shireen Abu Akleh. She was shot in the head by an Israeli soldier while reporting in a helmet and flak jacket clearly marked as press.
It was extremely upsetting. Even just her funeral, it was under attack. It was probably one of the biggest events that I've seen in my lifetime, where you see both the Palestinian struggle and Christian symbolisms sort of in one place. There were both Muslims and Christians praying together. Often there's this desire and interest to see Palestinians split on the basis of religion. And by the West, also a narrative where Muslims are persecuting Christians. But here we saw all Palestinians coming together.
You know, a lot of time when visitors come, they ask me, how is your relationship with your Muslim neighbors? And I simply ask, well, they're our classmates, they're our business partners, they're our neighbors, literally.
Mundir is also the director of the Christ at the Checkpoint Conference, which aims to teach Christians who visit Bethlehem from around the world about the realities of the occupation.
Prior to coming here, did you know that Palestinian Christians even exist?
Not really, no. I thought they were mostly Muslim.
What are your impressions of the West Bank and specifically the occupation?
It's insane to me, honestly. I didn't really know much about it coming here, which is I'm kind of ashamed of, but it really struck me because I just have never really seen people live like this before.
Jesus is believed to have been born just down the road. How do you think he would feel today seeing the checkpoints and the wall and the occupation?
I think he would barge in and give one of his parables, perhaps. He would make some pretty pressing demands on the people.
Meeting us actually opens their mind to a different narrative, opens their mind to the fact that maybe we did get it wrong about Palestine and Israel. And it is through a big misconception that this is a conflict between Jews and Muslims, as if we're caught in the middle, because not only we're part of the Palestinian people, but we're part of the Palestinian movement for liberation.
Palestinian Christians were among the earliest and most fervent opponents of British colonial rule in Palestine, and were early leaders in fighting against the displacement of Palestinians to make room for a Jewish state. And that fight continues on today with people like the Nassar family.
We're on our way to visit the Nassar family who we met at church yesterday. They own a 100-acre farm south of Bethlehem that the family has had for over a century, and it's currently surrounded by illegal Israeli settlements.
Here we are in the center of 5 Israeli settlements.
There's one right there.
There's one
We're
there.
looking at it.
You can see that all hilltops around us are already Israeli settlements existing, except of this hilltop. And so we are the only hilltop in this area that is without an Israeli settlement.
Dawood's grandfather purchased this land, now dubbed Tent of Nations, in 1916, a full 32 years before the creation of Israel. But now Israel says it owns the land and wants to build Jewish settlements on the Nassar family's farm. The family is fighting to stay on the land, but it's not easy.
إنه ممنوع نبني، ممنوع يكون عندنا مي، ممنوع كهرباء. معظم الوقت إذا بدنا نيجي ونروح نرجع من الأرض ونيجي على الأرض، مرات بتكون في check points.
Because of those restrictions, Dawood showed me where the family sometimes has to worship in an ancient underground cave.
Here we have our chapel where people used to worship.
Wow.
And still we have also a church service once in a while here. And this is the place where we come together. And it's about like being together, fellowship with one another.
Over the years, the Israeli army and nearby settlers have attacked Dawood's farm, setting fire to crops and bulldozing fruit trees. Still, in the face of all this, Dawood says they refuse to be victims.
How does your Christian faith inform how you resist this occupation?
Jesus also saw a lot of, like injustices happening. We refuse to hate, but that doesn't mean to accept the bad actions that people are doing against us. We are people who believe in justice.
Dawood's family has been defending their land in the Israeli courts for over 30 years.
I think, you know, when you're talking, people might not realize you're a Palestinian family on Palestinian land, and Israel's trying to take your land, and the only recourse you have is to resort to an Israeli military court. It's like the cards are stacked against you, it sounds.
Of course, we know that this is unjust, and we are under occupation. For us, this is the only way to try to protect, keep knocking at the door of justice, you know.
In the meantime, Daoud says that most of the other Christian families in the nearby village of Nahalin have left after being pushed out by settlements and blocked off by the wall.
You feel that we are the only hope for the village to exist. So our mission to protect the land is not just about protecting the private property, but it is the hope for many people. We ask you to bless our community here and to bless the food.
The farm hosts summer camps and activities for the local Palestinian community. It also hosts international volunteers. Thousands have come over the years and have more freedom of movement than the Nassar family themselves.
يعني أنا دائما عدة مرات بحكي للجروبات يا ريتني إنه أنا أروح معكم في الباص وتلففوا لنا لأنه مزبوط إحنا ما بنعرف جوا. إحنا ما بنعرف بالضبط من القدس وللشمال هاي يعني ما بنعرف البلد منيح. إذا أنت حطيتيني في القدس أنا ما بعرف بضيع.
احكي لي ليش أنتوا وجودكم كعائلة مسيحية مهمة كتير هون؟
مش عارف عمريش فكرت إنه أنا يعني إنه أنا بفكر إنه أنا فلسطيني وخلاص يعني بس بجوز إنه إحنا واحدة عائلة واحدة من قلائل عيال مسيحية إنه عندهم أرض ولساتهم موجودين بأرضهم مع إنه يعني كتير فلسطينية بمروا في نفس المشاكل يعني مشاكلنا نفس أي مشكلة لأي فلسطيني.
فدعا واحدا من الغلمان وسأله.
At the end of your service, when you were praying, you prayed to God to end the occupation, didn't you?
We pray for that every week. It's clear to me that God is not pleased with the occupation. God weeps over the situation of Palestinians. God weeps over the people who lose their lands. God weeps over the children who are killed every day. We need our Christian sisters and brothers to realize this and to help us.
While many churches around the world have spoken out against Israel's actions, there's a notable voice missing: the very devout and very politically influential American evangelical Christians.
I look into why that is in my next video and ask, how can Christians support a state that persecutes members of their own faith? Make sure you check out that video, and in the meantime, let me know what you thought of this one in the comments.